Hi, this is Gina. Thank you for joining me for this Astrology Chat Live for February 9th, 2025. Today, I want to do a big overview of the current chart. I want to take a look at the current astrology chart and just look all around and have a talk about sort of the big picture overview of what's going on right now. I try to do these overviews at least once or twice a week. I do a daily astrology chat every day. So other than these, I tend to focus on one transit or one aspect of what's happening in the current astrology or astrology in general occasionally as well. But I do like to do these overviews once or twice a week. Also, just to mention, we had some snow last night and they're plowing outside. So if you hear that noise, that's about. Okay, let's take a look at the current astrology. So whenever I sit down to look at a chart, one of the first things that I want to look at is the moon. Because even though, and I'm going to use some visuals here as we go just to kind of help to add some clarity to the conversation as we go. But hopefully it won't be too distracting. So one of the first things that I always, good morning, Jam, good morning. One of the first things I always look at is the moon, because even though it changes signs very often, very quickly, the moon goes all the way around the chart every month. So it only spends a couple of days in each sign. So I don't tend to overemphasize it when I'm looking at the big picture of a chart, but I do look at it initially, especially if we're talking about the tone and the feel of the day, because it really has to do with our emotions, how we're feeling, what we're working on sort of on that level. Again, though, it's so transient that I tend to kind of start there, but then definitely keep it moving, right? Because there are other notes that are so much more powerful. But starting with the moon today, when we're looking at the current astrology, the moon is conjunct Mars in Cancer. So this is adding, and we'll sort of talk about Mars while we're here, since these signatures are connecting. Mars conjunct the moon in Cancer adds to that emotional signature. And we might feel as though we want to sort of do something about the way that we're feeling. And I'm also getting that from this trine here over to Saturn. So the Mars is making a trine to Saturn right now, and the moon is at this exact time as well. Although by this afternoon, the moon will come out of that alignment, but Mars will still be there. And Mars trine Saturn, you know, Mars and Saturn can both be sort of tough planets. They can really make us get down to work, but they help us accomplish things. They help us move things that have been hard to move. And so this trine can, especially with the moon there, can really make you feel like you want to make something happen today. You might have that urge to really do something and to get something accomplished, to move something forward in a very, very practical way. But it might be almost like an emotional feeling or need. It might have that that sort of power to it, or that emotional note to it, because of the moon there. You know, also just to mention, with Mars and Cancer here in general, we might not have been feeling as motivated lately as we usually do. That Mars is not crazy happy in Cancer. It's debilitated in Cancer, as they say, and then we're in a retrograde as well, and have been for a while. So you may even be getting used to the feeling of not feeling as motivated, not feeling as confident or strong. You know, this Mars is digging into an emotional level of life, but sometimes that confidence and that strength might not be there quite as much. But with this trine today, and for the next couple of days, I think we're feeling way more motivated than usual, and we may feel really ready to move on something, and it may even be something sort of emotional. Okay, the next thing that I want to look at when I'm looking at this chart, to sort of put all these energies together, and we'll keep going back and forward, right? Because we can sort of now we can go talk about the sun, and then we can sort of add in those energies of the moon and Mars that we were just talking about to sort of get a fuller picture. Okay, so we've got that moon and Mars down there in watery Cancer doing their thing, making a trine up to Saturn, which is causing us to probably be feeling a little more emotional than usual and maybe a little bit more motivated too. And that might sort of be happening within a period where we're not feeling quite as motivated or confident. Um, Here we have the sun, and the sun happens to be conjunct Mercury. Mercury is conjunct the sun. When a planet is with the sun, we call it cazimi. And this is happening in the air sign of Aquarius. So, again, big ideas, especially putting this with what we just read. What are you thinking about right now? What are you talking about? What are you working on? And what are you discovering and learning and thinking about and talking about? This is sort of the information level, right? We were just talking about sort of emotionally feeling quite motivated and perhaps really being ready to move a project forward. This might be the ideas that go behind that, you know, and the conversations that need to happen. There's a lot of intellectual energy with the sun meeting Mercury in the sign of Aquarius. But it is also worth noting that these planets are in a square to Uranus. So the same way we had to bring in that trine from Saturn, we want to bring in the square to Uranus for this signature. The square from Uranus is adding some surprises. It's adding some electricity, some suddenness to this equation. So we might be getting these new ideas, this new information quite quickly. It might feel like it sort of is coming up out of nowhere. It might pop into your mind suddenly where you just are like, oh, I know what I want to do. This is the idea. Or it could be that new information comes to you suddenly. You know, you have a conversation with someone, you receive an email, something of that nature. But it probably is different than what you've experienced before, because I feel like we are working with Aquarius right now, and also in Aquarius, let me just sort of broaden the magnifying glass here to show, oh, sorry, that we also have Pluto here in Aquarius right now. This is a outer planet, very slow moving planet, will be in Aquarius until 2044. So this signature is really just beginning to open up. So everything that's sort of happening in Aquarius right now is feeling new and different. The conversations that you're having might be different than conversations you've ever had before. The things you're thinking about might be different than what you've ever thought about before. You should, if you know where Aquarius is in your chart, that would be helpful to know at this time with Pluto beginning to make its way through the sign of Aquarius. If you know your rising sign, you can check that on my channel. I have February horoscopes up, and I definitely talk about the Aquarius sector of the chart in there. So feel free to check that out. Okay, so we have all these different energies so far. We've got the new ideas, the new information, the motivation to move them forward. Since we've already talked about the sun and the moon, and Mercury and Mars happen to be connecting there, so did Uranus, so did Saturn, let's move over to Venus. That's our next planet going from the inside out. And you want to go from the inside out because we're going sort of from the most personal to the least personal. As you get to the further planets, we tend to be talking more about things that are happening in the collective, as they say, things that are happening in the world. When we talk about the moon, we're talking about like your transient feelings that are sort of right on the surface. You know, Venus, Mars, Mercury, your motivation, your actions, the way you're relating to others, the way you're communicating. So much to think about. So, okay, here we have Venus. well, I was just saying, and then we go further and further out and we get more into the collective and more into things that are still affecting you and a part of your chart. But for each of us individually, these we feel these inner planets on a more personal level. So that's the reason to go from sort of moon out. All right, so now we're taking a look at Venus and Aries. I have a lot of videos about Venus and Aries that I've done recently. I'll link at least one of them at the end here. You should think about checking that out because it's a very interesting signature, and we're going to have Venus and Aries for a long time. Venus will be moving forward in Aries for the rest of March, or for the rest of February. Then on March 1st, Venus goes retrograde through the sign of Aries again for the rest of the month. And then it will be back in May when it turns around after spending more time in Pisces. So February, March, and May, we have Venus and Aries. And one thing I've been noticing with Venus and Aries is, I often notice this with a strong Aries signature, it's just a certain quickness, a certain, things just moving a little quickly. Sometimes people are sort of tripping over their words. It was funny, right when Venus moved into Aries, I found myself doing it as I was making my recording. I was just sort of going so fast and talking so fast, I had to remind myself to slow down because I was just starting to trip over my words. And then I watched some other videos that day and I saw about 5 other people do exactly the same thing. I think especially coming after that Venus in Pisces energy, and so much Pisces energy in the sky in general, and so much water in the sky in general. The part of us that wants to go, the part of us that is feeling quick, direct, bold, maybe a little excited or anxious or angry, in a productive way, hopefully. But that fiery part of us right now feels funny in comparison to the other aspects in the sky, and it kind of is jumping out. Um, but yeah, Venus and Aries gives us all those things. Venus and Aries can be a little fired up, and she can be a little bold and direct about what she needs and what she wants. And I talked in an earlier video about how sometimes I think the ancient signatures of planets, when they sort of said that it was a negative or a bad thing, or that a planet was fallen or debilitated in a certain sign, like they say with Aries, with Venus and Aries, I think sometimes it was a bit, that needs some updating, because the idea that the feminine was feeling sort of fired up, is that a negative necessarily? Maybe she has a reason to be fired up. Maybe she has a reason to be angry. Maybe she has a reason to be a little bit protective. And expressing that in healthy ways and using that anger in helpful ways, or that energy in ways that are supportive of the self or others, can make that emotion into more of a positive thing. But yeah, I mean, especially after coming out of Venus and Pisces, there could be some sort of fire that is feeling a little bit lit right now that you might be noticing. And I actually feel like that's so supportive of everything else I talked about in this chart. All of this energy with the sun and Uranus, that connection that they're making. I want to talk about the Mars Chiron square as well. There's so much sort of like energy and potential today. It's like we're fired up to get a project underway, get it done. We have the ideas that we need. We have the passion and energy. I know it's Sunday, it's snowing here. It's not really feeling like a super action-packed, about to be a super action-packed day, but it should be a very productive day, and I think it's a really great day to get things done. You might really feel like getting things done. So that always makes it a good day to get things done. I do want to mention that some sort of wounds might be getting triggered a little bit at this time. It's just important to mention this Mars square to Chiron here, with the moon there as well. Chiron can be about wounds and about challenges in that way, but also about learning and healing and becoming amazing teachers in the places where we've been wounded. And so there maybe something, especially at this degree point, it's a sensitive degree point in Aries. That 19 degrees of Aries is right where we had the eclipses back in the spring. Um, and so that getting triggered with Mars, it's almost like, and somewhere in here, just be a little careful. Just be a little careful for wounds. And you know what, with what I was saying about Aries sort of moving very quickly, I think that's really true. And it is sort of, advisable to be a bit careful because there can be potential for just moving too quickly and not having like a big problem, but even just overdoing it at the gym or something like that and regretting it the next day. Or yeah, just moving too quickly and dropping something that you really love. So I don't know, slow down today. And paying attention to the ideas that you're having, the thoughts that you're having, the conversations that you're having, because you might be really getting some great ideas right now. And you might be getting them quite suddenly with that connection to Uranus. And they might feel really surprising and different. And you might really be feeling like taking action today. That Mars trine Saturn really wants you to get some stuff done. So getting some stuff done will feel really good. You might feel really motivated to get stuff done. And when you do, you'll feel great about it. Um, a little wound triggering potentially with um, that Mars Chiron square. We have Jupiter sort of stationing in the sky, which just adds to that signature of new ideas and expansive new information coming in. With the nodes, we're releasing perfectionism, releasing overdoing it, going with the flow in a different kind of way to make things happen with this North Node in Pisces. So practice that. It's not about moving through a productive day the way you used to. There's a sort of there's a harmony to it, there's a meditation to it, there's a following of intuition that's happening that is different than it used to be. So those are my thoughts on today. Does anyone have any questions or anything else I can say about today that you're wondering about? Hello to everyone in the comments. Hello, Adrian. And I will be back again tomorrow. I hope you just all have a wonderful day. Thank you so much for being here. I'll see you again tomorrow.